Lim sat alone at the edge of the cafeteria, his tray barely touched. The translucent skin of his hands trembled slightly as he picked at his food. Through the nearly transparent flesh, the blue-green circulation of his Nexilian blood was visible to anyone who cared to look. Not that many did. The Galactic Academy High School cafeteria buzzed with the sounds of 24 different species of adolescents. Tentacled Mori students slurped nutrient broth. Scaled drakons tore into protein cubes with sharp teeth. Hovering Eri consumed energy mists through specialized breathing tubes. Lim glanced up briefly, his large eyes quickly scanning for threats before returning to his tray. He had been at the school for 3 months now, and nothing had gotten better. "Look who it is," came a gravelly voice from behind him. The see-through kid. Lim's shoulders tensed. He recognized Krell's voice without turning around. The Draken student was nearly twice Lim's size, with armored scales and powerful muscles evolved for a high-gravity world. "Can almost see what you had for breakfast through your skin," Krell continued, circling around to face Lim. 2 other Drakons followed, forming a wall between Lim and the rest of the cafeteria. "Did they send us a baby Nexilian? Where are those famous mind powers we hear about?" Lim remained silent. His species did develop powerful telepathic abilities, but not until late adolescence. Right now, he could barely sense surface emotions from others, and projection was impossible. The academy administrators knew this but had accepted him anyway as part of their diversity initiative. "Nothing to say?" Krell's tail swished behind him, knocking over Lim's water cup. The liquid spilled across the table and onto Lim's uniform. "Oops." The other Drakons laughed, their scaled faces contorting in amusement. Lim grabbed a napkin and dabbed at his clothes, still not speaking. He had learned that responses only made things worse. Krell leaned closer, his hot breath smelling of meat. "You don't belong here, ghost skin. Your kind should stay on your soft, cushy planet with your mind games and leave real space to species who can handle it." With a swift motion, Krell knocked Lim's entire tray to the floor. The crash echoed through the cafeteria, and conversation stopped momentarily as heads turned toward the noise. Lim stared at his spilled food, hunger gnawing at his stomach. This was the 3rd time this week he'd lost his lunch. He could feel dozens of eyes on him, but no one moved to help. A few students looked away in embarrassment, but most quickly returned to their meals and conversations. "Clean it up, Ghostskin," Krell commanded, pointing to the mess. Lim slowly got down on his knees and began picking up pieces of his lunch. His hands shook harder now, and he could feel waves of cruel amusement radiating from the Draken's minds even with his limited abilities. Teacher Assistant Prak finally noticed the commotion and hovered over on anti-grav discs. "What happened here?" the 4-armed educator asked. "Just an accident," Krell said smoothly. "Clumsy Nexilian dropped his lunch. We were helping him." Prak looked at Lim, still on his knees. "Is that true, Student Lim?" Lim wanted to speak up, to tell the truth. But he could feel the threat emanating from Krell behind him, and he knew that telling would only make things worse later. "Yes," he said quietly. "I dropped it." Prak signaled a cleaning bot. "You may get another tray, Student Lim. The rest of you, return to your tables." Krell and his friends moved away, but not before Krell leaned down to whisper, "Smart ghost." "Very smart." Lim stood up and brushed off his uniform. The lunch period was nearly over, and the line for food was long. He wouldn't have time to eat now. As he gathered his belongings, he noticed Taeho, a quiet serene student, watching him from 2 tables away. For a brief moment their eyes met, and Lim sensed something different from Taeho, not amusement or disgust, but something that might have been sympathy. Then Taeho looked away. Lim walked out of the cafeteria with his head down. He had advanced mathematics next, a class where his natural Nexilian aptitude for multidimensional calculations should have earned him respect. Instead, it was just another hour of isolation as other students refused to partner with him. As he walked the curved hallway, his stomach growled. Lim reached into his pocket and found half of a nutrition bar he'd saved from breakfast. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. 6 more hours until he could return to his dormitory room and eat the emergency rations his parents had packed for him. Just 3 more years until graduation, Lim thought. 3 more years until he could go home. Jaiwoo stood in front of the massive doors of Galactic Academy High School, taking a deep breath to calm her racing heart. The curved metal structure loomed above her, its architecture designed to accommodate students from over 30 different worlds. As the first human exchange student in the Academy's history, she felt the weight of representing her entire species. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, adjusting the translator device attached to her collar. The Earth ambassador had spent hours briefing her on proper interspecies etiquette, but theory was different from practice. The doors slid open with a soft hiss. Jaiwoo stepped inside and immediately felt dozens of curious eyes on her. Students of various shapes, sizes, and colors filled the main hall. Some floated, others crawled, and a few moved in ways that defied human description. "You must be the human student," said a melodic voice. A tall, blue-skinned administrator approached her, walking on 4 tentacle-like limbs. "I am Administrator Sen. Welcome to Galactic Academy." "Thank you," Jaiwoo replied, carefully executing the universal greeting gesture she had practiced. "I'm honored to be here. Your homeroom is in Section 7. Follow the blue line." Sen pointed to a glowing path on the floor. "Your schedule has been uploaded to your datapad. Classes begin in 20 minutes. As Jaiwoo followed the blue line, she noticed many students whispering and pointing at her. She caught fragments of conversation from her translator. So small. No protective features. How did they ever achieve space travel? Primitive world. She kept her expression neutral, though the comments stung. Earth had only joined the Galactic Union 5 years ago, and humans were still considered newcomers. This exchange program was supposed to help integration, but right now, Jaiwoo felt more alien than ever. Her homeroom was already half full when she arrived. The teacher, Professor Dorn, was a tall Algorian with scales that shifted colors as he spoke. "Ah, our Earth student has arrived," he announced. "Please introduce yourself to the class." Jaiwoo faced the curious eyes of her classmates. "Hello. I'm Jaiwoo from Earth. I'm 16 years old and interested in xenobiology." A scaled Draken student in the front row snorted. "Xenobiology? You're the Xeno here." Some students laughed, and Professor Dorn's scales flashed red. "Krell, that's enough. We welcome all species at this academy." Jaiwoo took the only empty seat, next to an Exilian boy whose skin was so translucent she could see the outline of his organs. He didn't look at her, keeping his eyes fixed on his desk. Throughout the morning classes, Jaiwoo tried to focus on the lessons while absorbing the overwhelming newness of everything. The mathematics used 5-dimensional equations. History covered epochs before Earth had even formed. Physics discussed principles her world scientists had only begun to theorize about. During break time, Jaiwoo found a quiet corner in the library to catch her breath. As she reviewed her notes, she noticed the Nexilian boy from her homeroom sitting alone at a table, reading from a datapad. A group of Draken students entered, led by Krell. They spotted the Nexilian and approached his table. "Still trying to learn telepathy from a book, Lim?" Krell mocked. "Maybe if you stare hard enough, the words will jump into your weak mind." Lim didn't respond, but his transparent skin flushed slightly blue with what Jaiwoo guessed was embarrassment. One of the Drakens snatched Lim's datapad. "What's a ghost skin reading about? Advanced telepathic development? You're pathetic." Jaiwoo watched as they tossed the device between them while Lim tried to retrieve it. No one in the library intervened, not even the assistant librarian who floated nearby, pretending not to notice. Finally, Krell dropped the datapad on the floor. "Waste of academy resources," he said as they walked away, laughing. Lim quietly picked up his device and checked it for damage before returning to his seat. His hands trembled slightly. Jaiwoo stayed in her corner, conflicted. On Earth, she would have stepped in immediately, but here, she didn't understand the social dynamics. What if interfering made things worse? What if she violated some cultural norm she didn't know about? After school, Jaiwo found the Academy's database terminal and searched for information about Nexilians. She learned they were a peaceful species known for their telepathic abilities, which developed fully during late adolescence. Until then, young Nexilians were considered vulnerable and usually stayed in protected communities on their home world. She also searched for information about Drakons and found they came from a high-gravity world with intense competition for resources. They valued physical strength and often had difficulty understanding species that relied on other abilities. That night in her small dormitory room, Jaiwoo sent a message to her parents, "First day complete. It's harder than I expected, but I'm learning so much. There's someone here who might need a friend. Maybe that's why I'm really here." She closed her eyes, thinking about Lim and how no one had helped him. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, she would introduce herself properly. Jaiwo watched the xenobiology classroom fill with students. 2 weeks had passed since her arrival at Galactic Academy, and she was starting to recognize the patterns. Lim always arrived exactly 3 minutes before class started and took the seat in the far corner, away from everyone else. Krell and his Draken friends entered last, making sure everyone noticed them. Professor Dorn floated to the front of the classroom, his scales shimmering with gold flecks of excitement. Today we begin our paired research projects on adaptive biology. You will study how different species have evolved to survive in challenging environments. Jaiwo straightened in her seat. This was her chance. I have assigned the pairs, Professor Dorn continued, displaying a list on the large screen. Find your partner and begin planning your approach. Jaiwo scanned the list until she found her name, Song Jaiwo and Lim. Across the room, Lim's translucent face showed surprise as he read the same information. Several students glanced between the human and the Nexilian with barely hidden amusement. Poor human, Jaiwo heard someone whisper. Stuck with the ghost skin. Gathering her courage, Jaiwo walked directly to Lim's table and sat down beside him. Hello. I don't think we've properly met. I'm Jaiwo. Lim looked at her with large, wary eyes. I know who you are. Everyone does. I thought we could study extreme temperature adaptations, Jaiwo suggested, opening her notes. Earth has species living in both Arctic and desert conditions. Why are you doing this? Lim asked quietly. Doing what? Talking to me. Sitting here. You could ask Professor Dorn for a different partner. Jaiwo met his gaze directly. I don't want a different partner. I think we could work well together. Lim studied her face as if searching for deception. The others will talk about you if you work with me. They already talk about me, Jaiwo shrugged. I'm the only human here. Not much I can do about that. For the first time, Lim's mouth curved into something close to a smile. I guess we're both outsiders then. They spent the period planning their project. Jaiwo was surprised by Lim's knowledge and intelligence. He spoke little but his suggestions were thoughtful. After class, Krell bumped roughly into Lim as they exited, sending his materials scattering across the floor. Watch where you're going, Ghostskin, the Draken growled. Jaiwo didn't hesitate this time. She bent down and helped Lim gather his things. We should meet in the library after school to continue our research, she said, loudly enough for others to hear. That afternoon, they claimed a quiet table in the back of the library. Jaiwo brought snacks from Earth, dried fruit and nuts that she offered to share. Lim examined a raisin carefully before trying it. This is interesting. Not bad, right? Tell me about Nexilia. What foods do you have there? Slowly, cautiously, Lim began to talk. He described the crystal forests of his homeworld and the floating cities where Nexilians lived. He explained how young Nexilians attended special schools to develop their telepathic abilities. But you came here instead, Jaiwo observed. Lim's skin flushed slightly blue. My parents are scientists who study other species. They thought experiencing different cultures would help me, but my telepathic abilities are developing slower than normal. At home, I would have special tutors. Can you read my mind? Jaiwo asked. No, Lim said quickly. I mean, I can sense strong emotions sometimes, but not thoughts. Especially not from humans, your brains work differently. That's probably for the best, Jaiwoo laughed. My thoughts are usually a mess. They met every day that week, working on their project but also learning about each other's worlds. Jaiwoo described Earth's oceans and mountains, its crowded cities and quiet forests. Lim explained Nexilian art and music, created through telepathic projections. By the third day, Lim was talking more freely. By the fifth, he occasionally laughed at Jaiwoo's jokes. They discovered a shared interest in stellar cartography and began planning an addition to their project about environmental adaptations to different star types. On presentation day, they stood together before the class. Jaiwoo felt Krell's cold stare but focused instead on their carefully prepared materials. Our research examines how species adapt to extreme conditions, she began confidently. When it was Lim's turn to speak, his voice started soft but grew stronger. He explained complex biological adaptations with clarity and insight, even using subtle hand gestures, something Jaiwoo had never seen him do before. Professor Dorn's scales turned bright purple with approval when they finished. Excellent work. Your analysis of multi-environmental adaptations was particularly impressive. As they returned to their seats, Jaiwoo noticed something new. Several students nodded respectfully at Lim, and one Okwani student even asked a follow-up question about Nexilian light perception. We make a good team, Jaiwoo said as they packed up their materials. Yes, Lim agreed, his skin glowing slightly with what she now recognized as happiness. I think we do. Jaiwoo turned the corner into the east wing of the academy, an area rarely used except for storage in old classrooms. She had received a message from Lim asking to meet there to discuss their next project. Something about the message had seemed strange, but she hurried anyway, not wanting to be late. The hallway was quiet and dimly lit. Jaiwoo slowed her pace, listening. A sound like scuffling came from one of the unused classrooms ahead. She moved closer and heard voices. Thought you were special now, Ghost Skin? Krell's voice was unmistakable. Getting good grades, making friends with the human? Jaiwoo peered through the partially open door. Lim was backed against the wall, surrounded by Krell and two other Drakons. Lim's school bag lay on the floor, its contents scattered. His translucent skin had paled to an almost white color, which Jaiwoo now knew was a sign of extreme stress. I didn't send any message to Jaiwoo, Lim said quietly. Krell laughed. Of course you didn't. I did. But your little human friend isn't coming to save you. One of the other Drakons pushed Lim hard against the wall. Show us some of that telepathy. Maybe you can call for help with your mind? Jaiwoo took a deep breath and pushed the door fully open. He doesn't need to. I'm already here. All four turned to look at her. Surprise flickered across Lim's face, followed by fear. Jaiwoo, don't, he started. Perfect timing, Krell interrupted, his scaled lips pulling back to reveal sharp teeth. We were just discussing how humans don't belong in this academy any more than weak Nexilians do. Jaiwoo stepped into the room, letting the door close behind her. 3 against 1 doesn't seem very brave to me. The tallest Draken moved toward her. And now it's 3 against 2. Except you barely count, human. Your species is known for being soft. No natural defenses at all. Jaiwoo didn't back away. You know what humans are really known for, Krell? Adaptability. We survived on a planet with thousands of predators, many bigger and stronger than us. Yet here you are, smaller than me, with no claws, no armor, not even basic telepathy, Krell sneered, moving closer. True, Jaiwoo agreed calmly. But we have something else. We stick together. We protect our friends. Your friend can't even protect himself, the third Draken laughed, shoving Lim again. Jaiwoo met Lim's eyes. That's not true. Lim is stronger than you know. His species built a peaceful civilization while yours was still fighting over territory. Krell's tail lashed angrily. Big words from someone who can't back them up. Jaiwoo had studied Draken physiology carefully since arriving. She knew they relied heavily on intimidation displays and rarely faced real resistance. They were powerful but overconfident. I don't need to fight you, Krell. Fighting isn't the only way to be strong. Sounds like human weakness to me, Krell growled, stepping closer until he towered over her. It's not weakness to choose a different path, Jaiwo said. But if you think I'm afraid of you, you're wrong. The second Draken moved to block the door. No teachers around to help you now. Why do you need help? Came a new voice from behind them. Everyone turned to see Taeho, the quiet serene student from Jaiwo's mathematics class, standing in the doorway. Behind him were two Okwani students and a Vespid. This isn't your business, Krell snarled. It became our business when you used fake messages to lure students here, Taeho replied. His normally soft voice had hardened. The administration has been notified. Jaiwo used the distraction to move next to Lim. Are you okay? Lim nodded slightly, his eyes wide with surprise at the unexpected support. Krell looked between the growing group at the door and Jaiwo and Lim. His scales darkened with anger. This isn't over. Actually, it is, said Administrator Sen, appearing behind the students. All of you, to my office immediately. In the administration office, Jaiwo and Lim sat side by side while each student gave their account of what happened. When it was Jaiwo's turn, she spoke clearly about the pattern of bullying she had witnessed. Why didn't you report this earlier? Administrator Sen asked. I was still learning the academy's ways, Jaiwo replied honestly. And? She glanced at Lim. Sometimes speaking up at the wrong time can make things worse. Lim surprised everyone by adding, but sometimes not speaking up at all is worse than that. When they were finally dismissed, Taeho and the others were waiting outside. Why did you help us? Lim asked them. Taeho looked slightly embarrassed. I should have helped sooner. But seeing Jaiwo stand up to them, it reminded me that we all came to this academy to learn from different cultures. Not just academic learning. One of the Okwani nodded, her tentacles moving in agreement. Humans are interesting. So small but so determined. Persistent, Jaiwo corrected with a smile. That's our real strength. We don't give up easily, especially not on our friends. Lim's skin glowed with a warm blue light, the Nexilian expression of gratitude and happiness. Thank you. All of you. As they walked together toward the dining hall, students from other classes nodded or greeted them. Something had shifted in the academy's atmosphere. It wasn't perfect, and Krell and his friends would likely still cause problems, but a bridge had been built, one that more students were becoming willing to cross. 3 weeks after the confrontation, Jaiwo entered the cafeteria and smiled at the sight before her. Lim sat at a table that was no longer empty. Taeho was there, along with Nari, an Okwani student with colorful tentacles, and Daro, a quiet Vespid who rarely spoke but whose presence showed support. The cafeteria had changed subtly but significantly. Students still mainly sat with their own species, but the invisible barriers between groups had softened. Occasionally, someone would move between tables, sharing a joke or asking a question. The telepathy competition registration ends today, Nari said, waving a tentacle at the announcement board. Lim, you should enter. Lim looked down at his food. I don't know. My abilities are still developing. You've been practicing, though, Jaiwo pointed out. Professor Yoon said you've made incredible progress in just a month. It was true. Since the confrontation, Lim had begun attending extra telepathy sessions with Professor Yun, an Nexilian teacher who had offered to help him develop his abilities. The confidence Lim had gained from standing up to the bullies and making real friends had somehow accelerated his telepathic growth. Maybe I will, Lim said, his skin glowing faintly with the blue tint of excitement. Across the cafeteria, Krell and his friends sat at their usual table. After the incident, Krell had been placed on probation. One more serious offense would result in his removal from the academy. While the bullying hadn't stopped completely, it had become less frequent and less open. I have news, Taeho said, his voice quiet but happy. 5 more students have signed up for the cultural exchange program. 3 from my planet and 2 Drakons. Jaiwo raised her eyebrows in surprise. Dragons? Really? The cultural exchange program had been Jaiwo's idea, a simple weekly meeting where students could learn about each other's worlds. What had started with just their small group had slowly grown as others became curious. Not all dragons are like Krell, Taeho reminded her. Some are interested in other cultures. After lunch, they walked together to the academy's main hall, where the registration for the telepathy competition was taking place. Lim hesitated at the entrance. What if I fail? He whispered to Jaiwoo. Then you try again next time, she replied simply. The point isn't winning. It's being part of something. Lim took a deep breath and walked forward to add his name to the list. Several other students noticed and whispered among themselves. Nexilians rarely entered competitions until their abilities were fully developed. As they left the hall, they passed Krell in the corridor. The draken stopped, his scales darkening slightly at the sight of them. For a moment, tension filled the air. Then Krell simply nodded, not friendly, but not hostile either, and continued walking. That was different, Daro commented, his insect-like mandibles clicking softly. Small steps, Jaiwoo said. The day of the telepathy competition arrived. Lim sat among the Nexilian contestants, visibly nervous but determined. Most of the other Nexilians were older, with fully developed abilities. Some looked at Lim with curiosity, others with skepticism. The competition began. Each contestant had to receive telepathic images from the judges and then project them to receivers across the room. Accuracy and clarity were measured by advanced sensors. When Lim's turn came, he closed his eyes and focused. Jaiwoo, watching from the audience, could see his concentration in the stillness of his body. His translucent skin began to glow with a gentle light that pulsed slightly, a sign of active telepathic effort. The first few images were simple geometric shapes in basic colors. Lim transmitted them perfectly. The judges moved to more complex images, landscapes, mathematical equations, emotional concepts. With each successful transmission, Lim's confidence grew visibly. His light pulsed stronger, his posture became more relaxed yet focused. In the final round, only 3 contestants remained, Lim and 2 senior Nexilians. The challenge was to transmit not just images but complex emotional memories, the most difficult form of telepathic communication. When the results were announced, Lim had placed second, an incredible achievement for someone his age. As students filed out of the competition hall, many stopped to congratulate him. Even some of the senior Nexilians, initially dismissive, acknowledged his talent. You were amazing, Jaiwoo told him afterward, as their friends gathered around. I couldn't have done it without you, Lim replied. You showed me how to be strong in a different way. That evening, they sat together in the Academy's observation dome, watching the stars. The glass dome provided a perfect view of the 3 moons that orbited the planet. My parents sent a message, Jaiwoo said. Earth is sending 5 more human students next semester. Because of you, Taeho added. Your reports have changed how the Galactic Education Council sees humans. Lim's skin glowed with happiness. When I first came here, I felt so alone. I thought I would never belong. And now? Jaiwoo asked. Lim looked around at his friends, different species, different worlds, but sitting together under the same stars. Now I know that belonging isn't about being the same, he said. It's about building bridges. Above them, a shooting star streaked across the sky, a silent witness to a small change that would continue to ripple outward, from one classroom to one school to worlds beyond.